Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome once again to Orange Weekly, presented by Krause Health. My name is Brent Axe. You see our good friend Mike Waters on the screen as well. We're going to talk some Syracuse basketball with Mike here shortly, but great to have you here live, friends. We're on the Syracuse Orange basketball Facebook page. We have flipped on the football page as well because we've got a very interesting football topic to discuss, a new quarterback that has come to the football team via the transfer portal, and some offseason things continuing with the football team. We're also live on Syracuse Orange Sports on YouTube as well. So thanks for being here. Come on by in the comment section and let us know what you want us to answer for you, or if you just kind of want to opine on what we're discussing here on the show today, you guys are certainly free to do that. We'll highlight some of your comments as we go as well. And just as a reminder, if you missed the show live here, we like to do this Thursdays about 1 o'clock or so. Does archive on YouTube. We'll put it out on social media, and you'll see a post on syracuse.com as well. So easy to go back and watch the show later if you can't be with us live. And as you see right off the top, my good friend and colleague Mike Waters is here, syracuse.com, as we're going to get into the latest on the Syracuse basketball front. Welcome, Michael. How you doing?
I'm doing just fine, Brent. Looking forward to talking to Little Hoops with you today. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Always great to see you and have you on the show. And let's start with Tuesday's win over Pittsburgh for the Orange, Mike. I feel like no matter who they played, right? And this is something that you hear coaches say often. It's like, doesn't matter who we play. We just need to play a certain way. But it kind of felt like that Tuesday. Like no matter who the opponent was, this team just needed a win. They played in 3 straight games against, three. Virginia's off their usual pace, obviously, but still a brand name ACC program. Miami and Wake Forest are up there at the top of the league. And Syracuse loses those games by a combined 9 points. They're right there in all 3 of them. The Miami game comes down to the end. It's a 1-point game, and Syracuse had an 18-point lead at one point there. The Wake Forest game goes to overtime, and it's just like, man, they just couldn't get over that hump and grab a win. So no matter who they played Tuesday, it just felt like they had to, get back on track. And, of course, as you've been documenting pretty well, Mike, this is one of the worst starts Syracuse has had under Jim Boeheim. They've never been below 500 at this point of the season or around 500 at this point of the season. So must win's an overused term, but it kind of felt like they needed that on Tuesday, right?
Absolutely. It was a team, as you pointed out, that needed a win after 3 straight losses. But it was also a must win in terms of it's a quad 4 game. Pittsburgh's really bad this year in terms of the net ranking. It's quad 4. You've already got a quad 4 loss on your record with the home loss to Colgate. You got another bad loss at Georgetown. Syracuse can't afford any of these other really bad losses on its resume if it wants to hold on to any hope of a bid. And listen, given the state of the ACC this year, that hope is really slim because there's not a lot of opportunities for really good wins to make up for some of those losses out there. So you might just be a team that's gearing up for the ACC tournament, as much as you don't want to say that this early in the year. But a couple of those losses, those 3 in a row, they were just so galling. Giving up an 18-point lead to Miami and the way they did it was just that was just gut-wrenching. You walked out of the gym that night going, man, this team, where are their heads at? And I was actually really impressed with how they bounced back just 2 or 3 days later and how they played at Wake Forest, and they were doing really well. And yet just another galling loss.
Yeah.
Just inbound the ball.
Yeah.
Inbound the ball. And, all the excuses you can throw out there. Oh, Buddy was fouled. Oh, it might have been off Wake. Oh, what? Listen, doesn't matter. You got to inbound the ball. You got to get more open than that. You got to get a screen or something to get it in. You got to do a better job even on the first inbound entry, maybe to improve your positioning. They did that first inbound to Wake towards the corner. So when you've got fouled immediately, which you knew was going to happen, your out of bounds position didn't get any better. In fact, it got a step or 2 worse. You got closer to the corner. So, maybe on that first inbound, you should have gone long, go towards your. So it was just really, really bad how they ended up in overtime. And then, of course, they lose it in overtime. But, beating Pittsburgh was an absolute must on Tuesday for a number of reasons. And really for this team's outlook, their mental health, they needed it.
They really did. And So now they're back to 500, but they're going to be kind of straddling that line for a while here, unless they can go on a little bit of a sustained run here, Mike. And given the fact this team hasn't won more than 2 games in a row all season, that's going to be tough to forecast. And look, the ACC is pretty wide open, more than usual. I mean, Joe Lunardi's latest bracketology had 5 ACC teams in. I think 2 of them were in the play-in game. We kind of know what the top of the league looks like right now, and it's going to be a scratch, fight, and claw all the way here. But the thing that prevents Syracuse from going on any sustained winning streaks is defense. And yeah, they played better defense against Pittsburgh, particularly in the second half. I mean, I think Pitt was asking Alexa where the basket was in the second half of that game because they couldn't hit anything for the first 9 minutes of that. But look, Syracuse needed, I think, Mike, just to bank that in the memory again. Oh yeah, we can play a little defense here. And this is what it's like to shut a team down and take control of a half. But was it empty calories, I guess, in a way, because of Pittsburgh? They hit a few threes in the first half, certainly more than Pittsburgh usually plays. John Hughley, their unbelievable center, coming off a 32-13 game against BC. He was held in check, and at least they look better on defense. So I think maybe Pittsburgh is not the best judge of whether you play good defense or not. But again, feels like they just kind of had to do that on Tuesday just to kind of get it back rolling.
Yeah, Pittsburgh was the perfect team to help this Syracuse team get right. Pittsburgh doesn't shoot the 3 very well. They also don't shoot it very often, which is actually the key for a lot of teams this year against Syracuse. You're going to get threes. You're going to get opportunities to shoot the ball from the outside. A lot of teams haven't shot it particularly well from out there, maybe in the low 30s in terms of a percentage, but they shoot so many that they make enough that over the course of a game, it's just so many made threes can win you a game. I mean, if you go 11 of 38, that's not a great percentage, but that's still 11 made threes. Pitt didn't do that. Pitt shot it more than they usually do in the first half, and they made some. But in the second half, I don't think they made hardly anything. I mean, maybe two made threes. That's not going to win you a game against Syracuse. You got to make some shots from out there. So in a way, Pittsburgh was the perfect team for Syracuse to play. But don't tell the Syracuse players that. Let them think that they had a good game. They needed some confidence here. Let them know that, you were running around, you were covering your area, you made life tough on them. I think they need to experience a game like that. Now, things are going to change here a little bit. Florida State comes in. Again, they don't shoot the ball very well from out there, but they have a couple guys who can make it. Malik Osborne can shoot it out there. They have a 7-footer, John Butler, who can shoot it from out there. And the difference between Florida State and Pitt, Florida State's perfectly willing to take a 3. They showed that in that first game against Syracuse down in Tallahassee, where they took 33 pointers despite making only 4. It's it got to the point in the game where, no, you shouldn't take any more threes. Right. Just go inside. Yeah. But they kept hoisting up. So I expect Florida State to take just as many threes. I also expect them to make more than 4. So Syracuse is going to have to be ready again to defend the perimeter. And Florida State has a couple of their kids that take those threes. They're bigger guys. Yeah. Can Buddy Boeheim and Joe Girard actually get a hand in the face of John Butler when he's 7 feet tall? I don't know if they can. He missed a ton in that first game. We'll see. I think Florida State, despite how they played in that first game, is a much more of a threat to Syracuse on Saturday than Pittsburgh was on Tuesday.
Well, and with Florida State, of course, while we're on that subject, Mike, always a team that goes deep on the bench. Leonard Hamilton just loves to throw everybody out there. And, bench play for Syracuse is always an interesting topic, but particularly right around now, because I got to take a deep breath before I say this, Mike. I think fans get a little obsessed with certain things, as you know as well as anybody. And one of those obsessions is kind of that guy coming off the bench that's not getting enough minutes in their eyes. And right now that's Benny Williams. And look, to Benny's credit, this kid gets it. Okay. He has now done 2 interviews, one on the radio and one with our colleague and friend, Mike Curtis. Yeah. And the comments that he makes are grounded. They're smart. He gets it. He says, I'm here to, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it's basically he's trusting the process. He trusts the coaches. He's already flat out stated he is not going in the transfer portal at the end of the season, and you can only take him on his word there.
Yep.
There's a long-term plan here, right? He understands it. This is not a kid who's like banging his fist on the table saying, I need to play more. I think last year with what developed with Kadari Richmond, maybe he could kind of see the writing on the wall. He wasn't very happy with how it was going. And then eventually Quincy Guerrier moves on. And that's just life in college sports today. But I think fans need to take a deep breath with Benny and let this go at its own pace here. He's certainly showing flashes, and he's kind of right there in a lot of ways. But, man, when the kid gets it and the kid says, like, no, maybe I haven't earned all these minutes, maybe we should listen to him.
Yeah, we do. Like you said, we have to take him at face value right now. I was surprised he didn't play a little more in that Pittsburgh game. I thought there was opportunities to get the young kid in there when you're holding a double-digit lead throughout the second half, basically. When do you get the kid a little bit more run? I mean, it's nice that Cole Swider had a chance to stay in the game and make some shots, but does Jimmy Boeheim really need to be on the floor when you're up 20 or 18? I mean, Jimmy's fine, so yeah, I wanted to see Benny get a little bit more run, because I think every opportunity for him to get on the court is another step in the right direction. And, in that Wake Forest game, he had made a couple of outside shots, and one was a little flat, but the other one wasn't. And the other one had the kind of arc that actually we've been seeing on his shot more in warmups. The work is being done to improve his jump shot. Now, it's not consistently there yet in game action, but it's there more than it was earlier in the year. And, I thought between the Miami game and the Wake Forest game that we were starting to see Benny make some progress. And I know there were a few mistakes that might have, gotten him on the wrong side of Jim Boeheim's move that night, but I still, to me, every game and every minute is such an important opportunity for Benny that I could understand where some fans were like, hey, where's our young kid here? Where's the recruit? Where's the freshman? Let's get him in the game. So
that's the counter, because he only played 4 minutes, and that was an opportunity. And I talk about one of those games that we mentioned, the 3 prior to that, where they were all close, and you could see why you wouldn't want a freshman who was a little raw out there in that spot. And look, bench development we know is important. We've seen Symir Torrance at times. Benny is a continuing conversation. The question of whether Frank Anselm should have been in for Jimmy Boeheim at the end of that Wake Forest game, and the way they were attacking him defensively. But Mike, we all kind of, our eyes popped open the other night because, hey, there's John Bolajak. Hey, he's still on the team, right? Because he got a little run. And you know this as well as anybody. The theory there is if you are raising Jim Boeheim's eyebrows in practice, that's what's going to earn you the stamp of approval to get in. That playing time is the currency he hands out to these players. So maybe Benny's been struggling to practice lately. I don't know. So I get the other side of that argument that he should have played more, but the way some fans just get all up in arms. I mean, I literally, guys tweet me saying it's not a good win because Benny didn't play a lot. I'm like, what are we talking about here? Like, that's the line that you just went about 100 yards past.
Listen, in this season, with an 8-8 record, you win a game, it's a good win. I don't care if you only played 4 guys.
Exactly. And the last time Syracuse played, Jeff makes a comment here, keep the streak alive by winning against Florida State. When Syracuse played Florida State the last time, like they prevented a record. The Seminoles were about to set, what was it, the ACC record, I think, for consecutive home wins.
Yes.
And Syracuse came in. Yeah, threw a little monkey wrench in that. So now Florida State comes back up this way. This is 3 straight at home for Syracuse at this point. Pittsburgh Tuesday, Florida State, and then Clemson coming up here. So we mentioned that first game a little bit, Mike. What's kind of the story with Florida State, their net ranking, what this would mean for Syracuse in terms of a win if they got it? And I know their resume is not much right now, but you mentioned Pittsburgh is, you can't lose that. And you gain nothing by winning it. What's the gain if Syracuse gets a victory over the Seminoles here?
I think the gain is not so much going to be on the net as it is right now with Florida State. Just kind of bumping along. I think a win would continue to help build confidence among the players on this team. I think it would help you in terms of your ACC standings. You even your record at 3-3. You get a season sweep of a team like Florida State. So there's some separation there between you and some of your conference colleagues. It's just a shame how this team has gotten itself in a hole at 8-8. I mean, you look back and you're like, how did you lose to Colgate? How did you lose what is really turning out to be a bad Georgetown team? You lost an 18-point lead to Miami, and you couldn't inbound the ball at Wake. I mean, it's not much to go from 8-8 to 12-4. And think of the team doesn't have to be any better, really. Just have made a few better plays, played a little bit better defensively in the second half against Georgetown. This team doesn't have to have a lot of things go right to be 12-4, and our whole conversation changes here. Now we are talking about the net. Now we are talking about Syracuse being on the bubble of the NCAA tournament, and now they're looking more dangerous. But man, 8-8 is at this point of season, it's a deep hole. So you got to try to stack wins. You saw last week how hard it is to win on the road when you lost to Miami and Wake Forest. With these 3 home games in a row, you really have to win them. And again, Florida State looks a lot better now than they did the first time Syracuse saw them. Florida State's coming off a win over Miami, which at that point was undefeated in the ACC, and the Canes were coming off a win at Duke. So Florida State was able to beat the team to beat Duke in Cameron. So I dare say Florida State's got it going a little bit now.
That tells you all you need to know right there about where they're at. So Florida State is currently 72 in the net ranking. Clemson is 66. Those are Syracuse's next 2 games. And it varies based on home and road situations there. So by my math, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, those are both quad 2 games.
I think so. Sometimes I get like the cutoffs between neutral and home confused. I know quad 1, you got to be top 30 or higher.
At home, right. Yep.
At home. I want to say those are quad 2s. They're close.
They're close to it. They'd both be quality wins. But like you said, the important thing is just for Syracuse at this point, just to get some kind of winning streak going here, which is not going to be easy. A couple more things I wanted to ask you about, Mike. It's incredible to me how, I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase this, but Jesse Edwards is like that final piece to the puzzle. If he's in the game, he's playing well, and he's staying out of foul trouble, which can be a big if at times, right?
Mm-hmm.
It just balances everything out for this team. His development as a player has been fun to watch, and he knows it as well as anybody. He's got to stay out of foul trouble. Got benched in the first half of the Pitt game because drew Jim Boeheim's ire a little bit in terms of some defensive positioning and everything, but he's such a difference maker for this team, Mike. The Miami game is the best example of that lately, but go to Tuesday night. I mean, he made a big difference in that game, got to the free throw line 10 times, went 4 of 10 there. If he hit a few more of his free throws, he'd be up around 20 points. But the consistency that we're getting and seeing from Jesse at this point is I've been enjoying it. I think you're watching a player kind of round out into form, and you've written about him, Mike, and know this as well as anybody. And Jesse, I think, even said it the other night, like, he hasn't been playing organized basketball that long. And for him to be playing this well at a high level in the ACC at this point of his career, it's pretty impressive to watch.
Oh, it absolutely is. I mean, it's funny, he gets taken out for defensive mistakes, and I think he's the best defensive player among all the starters.
Yeah, for sure.
He really is. I mean, he's got about 47 block shots now through just 16 games. That's more than any Syracuse player had last year when they played 28. That's more than any Syracuse player had the season before that. You have to go back to Pascal Chukwu 3 years ago before you get a guy that had more block shots in a season than Jesse already has. And Jesse's going to pass Pascal's total probably in about another 2 weeks. He ranks 16th in the country in blocks. So just as a defensive presence alone, he means so much to this team. But then when you throw in the fact that he's averaging like 11, 12 points a game, he's averaging about 6.5 rebounds a game. It's just his improvement has just been remarkable. And you can see where he's got a lot more potential too. He can make more strides here. He gets a little stronger in the off season. He's going to rebound better. He's going to complete some of those moves around the basket that right now when he gets fouled, he's got to go to the line for 2. He gets a little stronger. Next year, he's making that shot. He's going to the line for an and 1. So he'll have those 2 points already banked. By the way, a guard will get an assist officially too if he gets that too. As a former high school guard, you want to see that guy convert.
Yeah.
You don't get that assist if he only gets fouled. So that's a little PSA for backcourt guys everywhere. But now Jesse, I tell you what, he's one of the players on this team that's been been performing above expectations. There's a few guys that have been meeting them and maybe a few guys playing a little below them. But Jesse has been, I think, the story of this team this year. He really has.
Last thing for you, Mike, for our friends watching here on Orange Weekly, I have sent Mike on a very important journalistic mission here. So as you know, if Syracuse gets to 70 points at the Carrier Dome, we're all awarded a free taco.
Yep.
And I've always wondered, like, how many people actually go do that? Because I think you have to cash it in, if you will, within 48 hours of the game or something like that. And I'm just kind of curious, like, how many people actually do this, like, on average after a home game? So that's
I'll have to check in with you next week. The next Orange Weekly. Hopefully I have answers for you by then, Brent.
So don't give it away now, but how far down the road are we here to getting an answer on this? Are you making any progress, or what's the status?
Efforts have been made. A progress status is probably lower than we would like right now.
That's what I'm wondering too. Like, do you actually have to show the ticket stub? Like, you know, I'm just thinking of like the kid working the counter at Taco Bell. You come in and say, I want my free taco because Syracuse scored 70 points. It's like, he's not going to ask for credentials or anything. He's just be like, yeah, sure. Here you go. Here's your taco. Right. But
yeah,
it's always been out there. It's saying the Syracuse Mets do it. The Taco Bell K-Man. Right. Like, how many people actually go get their free taco? I kind of want a sense of it. So Mike's the man to answer this question. In a future Mike's mailbox, I'm sure we will get as close to an answer as we can get for such a thing, right?
Exactly.
There you go.
Like some questions are so good, they require a little time to find an answer. So
these are very important questions that need to be answered at this point. Not that Mike's not busy enough. I sent him on down this wormhole to find the answers to these questions. He enjoys these challenges, though, right? If I wouldn't ask that if I knew you didn't actually kind of enjoy answering these mysteries from the Mike's mailbox.
Until our boss, Hank Doman, says, you've been spending your time on what?
Well, at least you can blame it on me if that's the case, right? You're helping out a colleague here. Well, Mike, always appreciate the time and the insight. Keep up the good work. We'll be reading, of course, Mike's mailbox, folks. Send him your questions. And, of course, read Mike's work at syracuse.com and follow him on Twitter at Mike Waters, SYR as well. Thank you, sir. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds great, Brent. Good to see you again. Take it easy.
Thank you, Mike. There he goes, folks. The great Mike Waters, syracuse.com. You know him, you love him, you read him. I've sent him on that very important mission. How many people actually, on average, cash in their free taco after Syracuse scores 70 points? These are very important questions we need answered in the world. So the football page is with us as well, and we talked a lot of hoops there, so appreciate our football fans that are watching, and some of you watching on the basketball channel, certainly Syracuse football fans as well. Really interesting development that actually broke during the Syracuse basketball game against Pitt on Tuesday, and that is that the Orange have received a new quarterback via the transfer portal. His name's Dan Villari. He is a transfer from Michigan. He is a Long Island native and went to Michigan a year ago. Now, if you track his kind of his recruitment, he was one of the best players on Long Island, led them to a state championship, his high school, and he was targeted by some big schools, and Michigan came in pretty late. And Syracuse wasn't really involved in his recruitment the first time around. He was looking at some other schools, but when Michigan missed out on C.J. Stroud, who ended up at their rival Ohio State, Michigan made an offer, a late offer to Villari. Villari goes, kind of discovers that he wasn't going to crack the lineup at Michigan at this point. You know, Michigan obviously had a terrific season under Jim Harbaugh, and goes into what this brand new opportunity is in the college sports world. Well, I want to play football. I don't want to sit behind these other two quarterbacks here at Michigan for the next couple of years. He goes into the portal, and Syracuse was one of the first to offer Dan Villari, and he's in. And it's been interesting. I don't know if you guys have seen, he's done a couple interviews the past couple of days. He was on our local ESPN radio station here, which, of course, I do a radio show on too, full disclosure. And, boy, I loved what I heard from this kid. I'm not going to lie. I mean, he was excited. He said that Syracuse was actually the school that he really wanted to go to. And again, for whatever reason, Syracuse didn't aggressively recruit him. You know, they had Tommy DeVito, and sometimes you just kind of have your players lined up, and it didn't work out. But Villari was saying in some interviews how excited he is to – he said he loves watching Eric Dungy play. and feels like he could play a lot like Dungy. And literally said in a couple interviews, our friend Kevin Marr, who used to work here in Central New York on the local television front, he's now down in Long Island, News 12 Long Island. He did an interview with him as well that I was watching. And Villari said that, he's going to be aggressive. He wants to leap over guys like Eric Dungy plays. And that's it. He's a mobile quarterback. He's a big guy, 6'4" at this point. Where's number 2? I don't know if that was a shout out or a credit to Eric Dungy at that point. But look, highlight films are what they are. You got to be careful with highlight films because they're all highlights, right? We don't see like the raw footage of, the missed throws and the missed plays and the things that kind of round out the evaluation of a quarterback, right? But arm strength seems to be on point. Just by judging and looking at it, seems to be a stronger arm than what Garrett Schrader has. And that was the thing with Schrader coming down the stretch of the season. Look, Syracuse made the switch to Schrader. They needed to. They went to that ground and pound approach. Schrader made some great throws. I mean, I think of that Virginia Tech game in particular, and made, just when you thought Syracuse couldn't throw the ball, Schrader made some big throws last year, but he's a running quarterback, and that's his best threat with his feet. Syracuse needs a quarterback that can throw the ball, right? And this is a team that's essentially looking for one win. Now, their schedule next year, this is another thing I wanted to note, is, at least on paper right now, really tough. So a lot of those, after the national championship game earlier this week, a lot of those like way too early top 25s come out. Syracuse, according to The Athletic, is going to play 5 of the top 15 teams in the country next year. So you got a tough ACC schedule. And look, think some of those teams. Pitt gets a ton of starters back. Okay, they're missing a big one, and they have to replace Kenny Pickett at quarterback, who was a Heisman finalist, but ton of starters back. Wake Forest, ton of starters back. So 2 tough teams right there in the ACC. Obviously, Clemson is going to be really good. You go out of conference, Purdue was a pretty good team in the Big Ten this year. That's going to be a tough non-conference game for Syracuse next year. So the ACC is tough enough. Add in a game like Purdue, and it's not going to be easy for Syracuse to find that extra win, right? They're looking for 6 wins for next year. But I like that they beefed up the quarterback room, put some competition in there with Schrader. And look, it's an even keel thing, because remember, Syracuse went out and hired a new offensive coordinator in Robert Anae from Virginia. Jason Beck also coming in from Virginia. And we've talked about him a bit on the show. I'm sure you guys have been reading up on him a little bit. I don't think Dino Babers thought that he'd have a shot at those guys when he went out in search of a new offensive coordinator when they moved on from Sterling Gilbert. When Bronco Mendenhall stepped down at Virginia, which nobody saw coming, it was a big surprise to all involved. It opened up an opportunity for Syracuse to get Robert Anae, who's a 3-time Broyles Award nominee. That goes to the best assistant coach in the country, strong offensive reputation. I mean, what Virginia did, the numbers are all top 5 in the country last year. Now they had Brennan Armstrong at quarterback. That helps. But when you look at Anae and Beck and their offensive philosophy, and particularly some quarterbacks they've developed, so it could be the best of both worlds here, in that you bring out the best in Schrader, or maybe Villari can come in and compete and win the job, because everybody's on the same page here. Schrader came in the same situation last year, came in, competed. Syracuse had to shift philosophies, wins the job, right? You think, well, Villari's got to learn the playbook, and he's got to come in and get used to things. He will be here for the spring semester. He will be there for spring practice. I saw Keith noted here, I can't wait to see Villari in the spring game. Dude has a cannon. He does have a strong arm. So if he can come in and prove he can get those receivers involved. Syracuse is also targeting a receiver, a few players in the transfer portal, but there's a transfer from Michigan State. His name is escaping me at the moment, guys. Let me look it up here so you can check it out and see what kind of player he is. But I was reading up a little bit on him earlier this morning. Just give me a second here. If you know it, pop it here in the chat. His name's right on the tip of my tongue. But there's a Michigan State wide receiver that's actually going to be visiting Syracuse coming up soon. So they're being aggressive there. Obviously, they've got to give whatever quarterback is out there next year a couple of weapons to throw to. And that's the thing. The portal giveth and the portal taketh away. And Syracuse has lost a lot of players to the portal, but they're still returning at this rate about 20 starters next year. And if you can add a couple of receivers, if you can give this quarterback a fair opportunity to compete, may the best man win, right? Because Schrader had to do the same thing last year. But a lot of players on this team are in the same position because while I think Dino Babers wants to keep some continuity and wants to keep somewhat of a philosophy going, that's why you hired Robert and I and Jason Beck as a combo so they can reboot the offense the way they see fit. Now, you obviously want to keep Sean Tucker heavily involved in the offense, but you don't want to be one-dimensional either. So I thought that was pretty exciting. And if you get a chance to go watch some of those interviews that Dan did, if you missed them or listen to them, I would encourage you to. I was really impressed by what he said, how he said it, how excited he is to come to Syracuse. That's half the battle, right? He's a kid that wanted to come to Syracuse even before he ended up at Michigan, knows the school, knows the area, and is excited to come. He's not just coming to Syracuse because that's the spot where he feels like he can get playing time. You need somebody that's kind of got some skin in the game and wants to be here, and that's great. And look, I'm not sure where Justin Lampson is in his development as a quarterback at this point. We haven't really seen a lot of him. We got flashes of Jacobian Morgan when he had to fill in when Syracuse's quarterback situation and their injuries piled up. But obviously, if Syracuse feels they got to get another quarterback in the room and they need some more competition, maybe those two aren't quite ready to take the job. Thomas, to answer your question, Tommy DeVito did get picked up. He's at Illinois. So Tommy DeVito, it was right around Christmas is when he picked Illinois. He was looking at Illinois. A few other schools were on the list. A lot of people felt like he could have ended up at Rutgers, his home school. But Illinois is where Tommy DeVito ended up, and he's going to be right in the thick of the competition for the starting job there. So he goes from the ACC to the Big Ten, and hope he does well. You know, I always enjoyed talking to Tommy. I had the opportunity to interview Tommy a bunch this year on the radio station, ESPN Syracuse, where I work, as we did a weekly interview with him. I really enjoyed the conversation. You know, good kid, and unfortunately didn't work out. And Tommy was everything you want in a quarterback, right? At least on the surface, on paper, 4-star guy, Elite 11 quarterback. He's in that 6-hour window, right, as Dan Villari is, as we're talking about here. If you can get those big-time prospects within kind of that 6-hour radius of where you are, that's always big. And Tommy certainly had the arm strength to come in, but, you know, injuries, offensive philosophies, hesitation in terms of Tommy struggled to really go through his progressions, get rid of the ball quickly. Obviously the offensive line was much better this year, but in 2019 and 2020, those 2 years combined, nobody gave up more sacks in the country than Syracuse. So, you know, just a lot of factors that combined to Tommy, you know, eventually feeling that playing somewhere else would be better for him, and certainly wish him the best at Illinois. But to answer your question, Thomas, yep, that's where he ended up at this point. Jack says, hey, look at them brutes at Alabama and Georgia. What about quality linemen here? Yeah, I mean, Bama, Georgia, LSU, go down the list. They're going to get kind of the first pick of those big, beefy offensive linemen. And then it gets down to the middle of the pack, the Power 5 conferences and those teams and those conferences and well beyond that. But look, I feel the offensive line did a lot better this year. You can't have Sean Tucker at one point being the leading rusher in the nation and finishing in the top 3 in the country and being one of the best running backs in the country if you don't have a decent offensive line. He can't do it all on his own. So I feel like that offensive line got better. Certainly can still make some improvements, particularly in the passing game, but it certainly was better this year than the prior 2 years to that, as we noted. Chris asked this question here: hot seat for Babers soon. Look, you know, he's going into year 7 here, and 5 of the prior 6 years did not result in a bowl game. You made the investment in Robert Anae and Jason Beck. You've got one of the best defensive coordinators, up and comers, and a guy gaining reputation out there in Tony White. I think people are really satisfied with his defense and how they did things. We mentioned 20 starters coming back, whatever else they get out of the portal. Tough schedule next year, but, you know, welcome to college football. You would think you've got to get to a bowl game. It is absolute bowl or bust. You can't kick the can down the road any further if you're John Wildhack at this point. But to Syracuse's credit and to Dino's credit, I think they're doing a lot of what you need to do to at least reload and give it your best shot here. Got a quarterback out of the portal. They're being aggressive in searching for some other players. The coaching staff moves that they made. Don't forget, they also hired a Bob Ligashevsky to be the special teams coordinator, which this team desperately needed. I mean, honestly, Syracuse is, if you want to boil it down, their 2 biggest weaknesses, if you kind of take a step back and look at last year, were really three: play calling, time management, and special teams. So Dino recognized that fault, brought in a great play caller by all accounts, and two offensive minds that have strong reputations and look what they did at Virginia last year. That's all you need to really look at. And you want somebody that's got a strong reputation like that. Did it. They addressed special teams by getting somebody in to focus it. And one thing I haven't even mentioned, guys, look at the players that Syracuse did not lose either to the portal or to the National Football League that maybe people expected. Mikel Jones, back. Garrett Williams, back. Andre Schmidt, back. And I know there was a couple of kicks this year that Schmidt had a pretty weak year by his standards and their lofty standards, because at one point he won the Lou Groza Award as the best kicker in the country. But something was definitely off on special teams this year. They've got to solve the punter issue. There were a lot of penalties on special teams. It was a mess this year. So to bring in Bob Ligashevsky, who's coached in the National Football League, been in coaching about 40 years, to dedicate to that position, credit to Dino and John Wildhack for recognizing that. And, frankly, probably spending some money here. My belief was they were going to combo the offensive coordinator and quarterback position. They went two different names there, expanded the coaching staff. Now it's tricky because you can only have so many positions on your coaching staff. There's an NCAA limit there. So you kind of have to shuffle some things around and figure it out. But they addressed absolutely what they needed to. By the way, we had Mike Waters earlier. Nate Mink wrote an interesting story. Our friend Sean Tucker, you don't have to wait until the fall to see Sean Tucker in action again. He's actually going to be running with the track team, the indoor track team. And I believe they start pretty soon here at Syracuse. So look up that story on syracuse.com. And Nate wrote about that the other day. I thought that was pretty neat. And Sean Tucker can be pleased with his performance in more ways than one at this point. So some interesting football stuff going on here. And before you know it, guys, it'll be spring practice, and we'll be getting into that. And wanted to note here, we don't have our lacrosse page turned on. But if you're a lacrosse fan and you're watching this, just know I got you, okay? In future episodes of Orange Weekly, the lacrosse team actually starts practice today. The men's lacrosse team, the women's lacrosse team, they start practice, and they're about a month away from their first game. But we're going to be getting into that conversation. There was a really interesting story that came out this week. I don't know if you guys saw it, that incoming next year, not this year, next year, the number one recruit in the country, Joey Spallina, who's going to wear the 22 at Syracuse and is one of the most dynamic recruits Syracuse has had in years, just signed a name, image, and likeness deal with Gate Lacrosse. Now, Gary Gate, of course, is now the men's coach. I don't think he's really involved in it anymore. There's obviously limitations there being a NCAA coach, and there's some rules there. Paul Gate runs that mostly, but I think that's pretty interesting that, the brand name that your head coach is, incoming recruit, whole new world of name, image, and likeness before he steps foot on campus. Joey Spallina doesn't even come in till next season. Already got an NIL deal for the next 4 years. Whole new world we're living in, friends, at this point, right? So big thing shaking on the lacrosse front. And as we go through the winter here and get into the start of lacrosse season, we are going to talk lacrosse here on Orange Weekly, and we got a couple of fun things planned for that. So just kind of stay tuned on that. As I know it's like January 13th, we're talking lacrosse, but like I said, practice started today. Like, they're going to get into it. And these are two teams. The men's and women's lacrosse teams are both national championship caliber teams. And I think are going to be really exciting to watch. Have really interesting storylines. Gary Gate takes over the men's team. Kayla Trainer comes in to take over the women's team. I think that women's team is going to win the national championship. I'll flat out predict that right now. So we're excited about that. And there's a couple things that you'll be seeing coming down the road here. So busy times, right? Basketball trying to fight its way above 500. Still some football news to digest and look at. And spring practice will be here before you know it. And a little lacrosse as well. So lots to come here on Orange Weekly as we go forward here. All right. What do you say we end it there for today? Really appreciate you guys coming by. Just a reminder that Orange Weekly airs live about 1 o'clock or so on Thursdays, but you can certainly watch the replay whenever you want on Syracuse Orange Sports on YouTube. We put the YouTube clip on our social media channels. If you're watching on Facebook, the video automatically archives there. So just have to pop into Syracuse Orange Basketball or Syracuse Orange Football on Facebook, and you can watch the replay, or we put up a post on syracuse.com as well. So enjoy the rest of your week. We'll be doing post-game live after the Orange take on Florida State on Saturday, and that'll leave us enough time to watch the Bills game on Saturday night too. So there you go. Go Bills. Let's get those Patriots in the playoffs, all right? So that's when we'll be with you next on the Syracuse Orange Basketball Facebook page and here on Syracuse Orange Sports on YouTube as well. For now, that's Orange Weekly, presented by Krause Health. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll talk to you next time.